talking about tech. Like, I am a huge tech evangelist, and any opportunity to look at how we can use this amazing industry we work in to solve problems and to do really fancy stuff, or even just really mundane stuff. I'm so there. So my background is, I started out at university doing occupational therapy and didn't last in that very long. It wasn't really suited for me. I was like, I'm very keen that people get career advice, because I am an example of when it doesn't work very well. And I came into sales, and I ended up working in technology sales. And then as I fell in love with the industry, I started doing a lot more, study. So finishing an organizational business innovation thing, some degree from Massey, I can't remember what it's called, and do a lot around governance and data governance. So that's kind of where my interests mainly lie. So pick that up wherever I can.
Yeah, so I think you landed in Dunedin about the same time I did, if we're going back to...
Oh, so you're not from here?
No, I'm for my sins from the North Island, but don't tell anyone that.
Oh my God, if I'd known.
I found, well, perhaps I wouldn't have had so many guests. But about 2011, I think, and you were coming into, I think at that time it might have even been Genii for a brief stint.
Yeah,
because I'd come out of Genii in Auckland, so I've been around in this industry for a long time. Look, we'll navigate through. I shared some questions with you to kind of prep you. We will see if we go to script, or let's just sort of take the conversation wherever it goes. But look, my observations of yourself is you've gone through that the leadership journey from being someone that takes a customer on a leadership journey, if you like, through making some choices, all the way to this end where you're a founder and you've been doing the grind with an initiative and an organisation of your own. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I started working in technology, and a lot of that was from the sales perspective, like organising and supporting and helping and trying to realise where strategically companies were going to and from. And I think the pivot came after selling quite a lot of different bits and pieces. So, land, WANs, automobiles, anything that's in there is where I started. Telco, oh my God. Telco. And then kind of pivoted into bespoke solutions with an ex-company I worked for. But I think the driver, I fell in love with data and business intelligence for a start, and I started my own company with a couple of partners and did that for 3 or 4 years, and then came into the one I'm in now. And all of it has been about problem solving issues that I don't feel are touched on by businesses or technology. So, it's about innovating in our own way. And a lot of the stuff I do is really boring. I think it's sexy as, but I've been informed by my family multiple times that I'm the only one who's of that opinion.
Well, I think they need their heads read.
I do too.
Look, and innovation and change is a big thing related to tech, right? There's all this narrative at the moment around AI. Oh, it's new. Let's get real, folks. It's been with us since the 50s.
Yeah.
How do you lean in and think about change and innovation in that space?
Well, I'm fascinated with the potential of it, totally. But as with everything that comes along, everyone goes, oh, it's new and exciting. The ability to put governance around it is always an afterthought. And there's a lot of power that comes with really harnessing that capabilities within organisations. And a lot of our organisations aren't in a position to really consume it. I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago, and they said, oh, no one uses AI in my company. And I started laughing. I go, of course they do.
Right.
They absolutely do. They're using it whether you like it or not. So you might as well get out of front of it.
They probably hadn't had a security breach either.
Well, I mean, you don't even need a security breach. If you're actually asking your AI to help write your financial reports or something along those lines, that's good training fodder, out there in the wild ether. If an AI can get hold of it, someone else can.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be quite, I was going to use intentional.
Yes.
Head conscious was about the thing, but intentional is probably more appropriate in that sense. What sort of conversations are you having in that space with people at the moment, and the leadership teams you're engaging with? How are they thinking about this stuff?
I don't think they really understand the power and the potential of it. So, because we've had the same conversation around automation. We can automate everything, and then you throw people at something that a technology problem can do. I think it comes down to the appetite of wanting to change, and with change being something that's constantly upon us, I do wonder whether we're focusing on the wrong things within organisations. Why don't we focus on the ability to become really good at change, regardless of what the technology is that we're using to do it? Because at the moment, as we sort of butcher our way through a lot of our projects and a lot of our innovative thinking, people are getting broken in the back end trying to make things fit together. And so I do think it's about becoming a change organisation, and then you use the technology in its right place, which is to help the long-term strategies and the goals that you have. It's not a means to an end in itself.
What does good change look like?
I don't know. Have you seen any? Let me know when you see it.
Well, I mean, I could tell you the theory. Shit changes and it sticks, But we've all seen those projects that, sell and promise the world, but fail to deliver on a number of fronts. So I think you're on point there around the change and becoming more effective at that. When you filled out my little form, you talked about being a nation of change agents.
Yeah.
What does that look like for you?
Well, I like that story that I heard about coming back to rugby, because we were talking about earlier. New Zealand has to travel more than any other country really to go to their events, because we're so remotely and so isolated, which means our jet lag and all the other things that go with just travelling to do a game in, say, France or in Scotland. So, the All Blacks decided to put a lot of effort into becoming good at travelling. They're a travelling team. That's what they do. That is what they're best at. And they turn up and they play a game, and they're usually pretty phenomenal at it. And that mentality, if we bake that into our organisations and say, right, we're an organisation that is really good at changing, which means we can pivot. We're not wedded to anything. We're not emotionally invested in stuff if it doesn't work. And we have got the full support and heading of the board. That's a really good place to start. But change is a culture. It's not one person pushing against the tide. And I do think, just with every evolutionary leap forward in technology, there is that requirement for people to really go, do I like this? Like, I love change. I run towards those fires. I'm like, oh, what's going on? How can we get involved? But some people are not like that. And if they're not like that, then perhaps they shouldn't be in that area. They're not suited to the roles that we're going to expect them to do. So we should be recruiting for a different mentality, I think, over and above our technical skill sets.
Yeah, I think that's really important, certainly in my time in the industry, which is getting a bit out there. 30 plus years. I was reflecting on that the other day, and it seems like yesterday, I was in Hamilton and working with a whole lot of people. Actually, I'm on a tangent here, funny story. The Aware Group, talking about data, was headed up by Jordan Templeton, and they've just recently done a good deal with an international to buy them. And I worked with Jordan's dad like years ago.
Yeah.
And these things, you see some similarities or patterns. But we were talking before we came on air about the technologists and, being very stereotypical. We're quite introverted. Well, I'm an introvert. Don't make no bones of it, because it takes a lot of recovery. And so introvert. How do you overcome that? A lot of the audience is technologists or technology leaders. How do you see that being dealt with? We're having a conversation on the board or whoever.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think you can learn anything you want to get good at, really. If you're really invested in it, you'll learn the skill sets to marry up with where you want to go and what you're doing. But I think I've always made a role for myself out of being between a bunch of introverts and everybody else, and being able to decipher that information. And maybe that's where that personality and that capability sit. I always believe you should build on your strengths, and if it's not talking to someone, you can learn that skill set, absolutely. But if it's not your strength and you feel really awful at it, maybe there's better ways to pivot and engage. So maybe it's an evolution in itself there about how we structure technology teams. At all within organisations, maybe they're not the way they should be for the work we're asking them to do.
Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum. Like some of the folks I've put, certainly I've had a couple in my team who are, I would say, probably more sales oriented. Like
Yeah.
one, in fact, did sales, worked for HP years ago, and so that half of the team can go out and sort of have a different conversation, and then you get your more technically focused or minded people who are brilliant because they can line up behind or alongside that to get a better outcome.
So that
What's your experience?
multidisciplinary team is what you've gone for in your organisation.
Yeah, certainly in the architecture practice, if you like,
Yeah.
for us, it's a bit challenged right across, where you get more intensity of technical skills. You'll see some of the softer skills are less prevalent, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But like you said, it's how you organise yourselves to maximise those different skill sets, I think, is the
Yeah.
salient point.
Interesting.
How are you seeing that when you're engaging with customers and other organisations?
See, a lot of people get the top job because they've been around and they know their stuff. And then they hire people who are exactly like them.
I don't know what you're referring to.
Well, like I think we can agree, because we were talking about it earlier, that diversity is a spice of life, and you bring different skill sets to the table. And if you can, it takes time to build a team that's like that, but it makes you more resilient and more capable and less likely to miss things as a group. If you're always hiring the same kind of folks that are just like you because that's what you understand, that can actually really become a disadvantage when you're looking at innovation, where you've got to move fast, or you need to break things, or you've got to go talk to people, or you've got to pick up new skill sets and try them in a different area. And, so you've got to be recruiting for a different vision, and the vision really should be painted by the organization, by the company. It should be spelt out, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to, it may not be this is how we're going to do it, but this is what we want to achieve, and then left up to the managers and the people who can go and recruit to figure out, perhaps with the help of HR, to figure out what those capabilities as well as personalities they need in the team. Yeah,
it's interesting you say that, and it has to become quite intentional, right?
Yeah.
In making some of those choices. I mean, I think some of the lessons I've learned where you are trying to build some capability as well as capacity, it's difficult to get that balance, particularly when there's a raft of latent demands you're trying to keep up with, the technology refreshes and all of these things going on, that you can get romanced almost into making less desirable choices.
I like that, romanced.
Kind of got to step back from it a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not even why I use that word, but it felt right.
I like that.
In your startup and your founder, so how big's the team now?
We're about 10.
Yeah.
So we're still pretty small. We definitely fight above our weight. And so we are made up of 50% my side of the business, which is commercial sales, professional services. And on the other side, Basil runs the product team. And the reason we did that is because I'm big picture and I focus on the people, and he needs to focus on the product. And so splitting our natural mindsets. And what that leaves in the middle between us is the ability to probably put someone in there at a later stage, grow someone into a role where they can run professional services as a standalone piece, or as in cahoots with us. So that's kind of what we decided to do. But state 3, basically, we were talking about it before, it aligns technology and business so that you can understand how technology has been consumed in your business. And then we've got change management and risk and all those things over there. And the reason we started that was because there's a gap. When I come in with my old hats on, trying to figure out or sell something to an organization, it's rare that someone can tell me how many servers they've got and what's on those servers and who consumes that information, or who's utilizing those licenses for those applications. And so having that there at your fingertips makes sense to me. I think it's just a 101. Like I said, what we do is not sexy. It's real basic stuff, but it's the basics that tend to get missed. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Right, and often it's left out simply because it's quite hard to pull all that stuff together if you're not thinking about it, and if you're reacting to it, you never get in front of it. Right, so the ethos of having that design led and allow that information to then flow through. If you're coming from an implemented set of things that have been there for a long time and you haven't got scant, it's really, really hard to then piece it together. So some of the things we are recognizing is there's lots of single points of failure, you know, in the human element of it, because we've had to rely on people. And that's not a bad thing, small team, the pressure that comes with that. But in terms of defining a change agent in the context of the tech industry, what does that look like for you? We talked a little bit about it in the green room just before we got on, but I'm interested in your thoughts there.
So I think, like you said, you use that word intentional quite a bit, and I really like it. Like, being a change agent is an intentional mindset. May sit easily, may not fit easily, but from the managers and the leaders of an organisation right down to the last person, they should be walking in and going, how can I add value to what I do on a given basis? Now, if I've got great ideas, then I need to be sharing and actually being able to recruit other people in the team to see if that's something we should be exploring. So I think change agent means good communication, absolutely solidly put into everything that we do. We're going to do this. This is how we're going to do it. This is who's going to be impacted. Here are the comms and all of the information that you need to know. And we're just going to keep going. And that communication, that way of putting it out there becomes consistent. This week, this is what we're focusing on. You know, because what I see is a lot of organisations scattergun it. Like they're doing this and they'll get halfway through, or they'll get 95% through and they'll drop the last bit and then they'll go into something else and it doesn't get implemented and, you know, implemented properly or suitably enough for the organisation. And you end up being a jack of all trades, master of none. So you've really got to have that solid focus. I'm going to do the basics right and get the foundation correct. And then we're going to build this capability into our team, because it's going to help us move forward with AI or whatever it is that we're looking to utilise in these other areas. A lot of organisations don't take the time to consider that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I go back to that the word intention, right? If you don't lean into this with intention, it becomes just a massive cool ideas. Like, and I'm a ADHD boy here. I've got shitloads of good ideas. Completion somewhat upper challenge, but but you build your team around you, right? And to get further ahead and then sort of bring those ideas to life, fill your weakness or fill your lesser capable parts of your skill set's really important.
Yeah.
You share a pivotal moment or experience that solidified your belief in the need for more change agents in New Zealand and the tech landscape?
Well, there's probably two. One of them was watching people burn out. So they go head down, arse up, straight into a project. Their families, their children, their outside life gets kind of pushed or reprioritised for a period of time. Mental health, and gets impacted. Not eating, not sleeping, not doing the basics properly. Feeling really worn out to the point that they feel burnt out. And so, if that's what change does to people, then we're doing it not the right way. We've got to think about a better way. We're not all working for Elon Musk and going to get nose to grindstone, otherwise you're fired type of thing. We've got to actually figure out how we supplement our teams and do handovers to try and, if we need 24/7 support to do something, that it's not coming at people's individual costs, because that just shortens the capability. So I think how we look after our people is really important. And I think on the other side of things, it's about, being really skilled at prioritising what is important and being understanding how long that's going to take to deliver it. So you can't just go, take a month, when it's going to take a year.
Yeah.
I mean, I do look at timelines and go, where did you pull that out of? Because it looks a little odd to me, And I'm not the expert. I'm just somebody who's been around the industry a long, long time. I know enough to be dangerous, but some things just strike me as being very ambitious with no understanding of what the cost is going to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it quacks like a duck, then
it's a swan.
Chance it's a freaking black swan, perhaps. In that sense, so like it is, and I think that with that regard being driving and then being ambitious, right? And striving to get outcomes and put a little bit of pressure on, but balancing that with being kind and being thoughtful and all of those things is really, really important, because if it's the other way, you just end up shitting on people. And I've done both. I've been in both, right? And it's not good for anybody, because actually you never deliver anything of worth, because all you're doing is driving to a date or a 5 p.m. on a Friday, and you've forgotten about actually why you're doing this, and it's invariably not any of us. We don't use this stuff, right?
I think that's a really good point, actually. Like while your teams are delivering, you've got to keep them focused on why they're doing what they're doing. And I do think that we get busy for the state of just being busy, rather than knowing that there's actually got to be an outcome, because we're outcome driven, right? We tell everybody that. I tell people that. I have a list of all the stuff I'm going to drive in terms of outcomes. We're going to enable X, Y, Z. And then when we go in and we do the show and tell, we have to do X, Y, Z, because you said you wanted this and we've delivered it. Can you see what we've done? And yet there's more requirement for an external vendor to do that than there are for our own internal teams. But why should it be any different?
It shouldn't be, right?
Yeah.
It absolutely shouldn't be. And I think people get perhaps there's a little bit of confusion around outcome and output and value and all of these things. For mine, you just got to simplify it and take it back to, well, if we do this, how might this happen? Or, and don't get too head up in the tools, the frameworks and all these things. Technologists are freaking good at looking at the shiny shit and the next framework and I'm as guilty as the next person. But taking no action. So, well, actually, what do you got to do? It's neat, but is it helpful?
Yeah.
Right? Talking about the diversity thing, I've just gone back to that thinking earlier, and in the context of well-being, I read something just maybe yesterday or Saturday around diversity of emotion and other things as well, like the human side of things. What's your thoughts in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. There's the diversity that people talk to, which is around ethnicity and possibly gender, but there's all these other, like neurodiverse and ADHD and all these other bits and pieces. Like there are strengths for all of the things that we possibly didn't realize. And I think if you can understand what those strengths are and how people work as a team, there's a real art. There's a real science and a real art to putting together a high-functioning, capable team. I remember doing Belbin. Do you remember? Did you ever do Belbin? Well, I was Shaper. What were you? I'm just curious.
Shaper was one of them, and I can't remember. Finisher completer, I think. Shaper, but the completion was a little bit further away.
Well, I was Shaper, and that was pretty much 100% of what I did. And I remember looking at it and looking at the team that I was in, and we were all Shapers to some degree, or whatever it is. And I'm like, that's actually really bad. We're good at putting a view on what needs to be done and providing insight into how it needs to be done. But if you've got all of those people sitting on the same team, that's a disaster. Where are the people that provide, deep knowledge and have expertise and skill sets that you can bring in and shop out? And, who are the doers and who are the people who are really good at communicating? So whatever framework you kind of adhere to, we need that diversity of the way we look at life, the way we do life, the strengths and weaknesses we bring as individuals, and I'm just one of those people, we saw it over lockdown. Everybody went home to work, some more successfully than others, but that's what we ended up doing, and I loved I loved it. It was great. I could work and I could put the washing on and I could give my daughter a hug and give my dog a pet and go back to work, and I could do it all in one place. It felt better. So if we can basically mobilize an entire workforce and an entire world to pivot and work from home, we can definitely put our teams together in better ways and different ways and function differently. If work is so important and productivity is so important, why are we not doing, I don't know, 4 days on, 3 days off, and running different ways of doing work? Why are we not doing longer working hours and having 2 shifts? Why aren't we not job sharing more? Why are we? I'm not saying do all of it at once. I'm saying whatever is contextually right for your organisation, pick it up and give it a crack. But why are we not doing that? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's a
we're
big
9 to
paradigm
5
shift,
and everybody turns up and then they go home, and then you just go like, is this the best we can come up with? Is this really the best way to do work?
Yeah, it's I think we're on the precipice of something quite a big fundamental shift.
Yeah.
I go back to some of the stuff. Having worked at Microsoft, I was afforded a lot of tech much earlier than companies even these days are still behind where Microsoft was 15 years ago, and just in the ability to work remotely, it's probably less of a gap now given COVID proved us all wrong. But in that way, I still think it's still a balance though in that regard, and keeping and having options for people, because work is still quite human, and you still have to have those deep connections, which you don't get digitally, right? That's much harder to. So yeah, it's an interesting time that I think we've got to lean into. In that sense, though, what inspired you to co-found the State 3? You clearly saw an opportunity, and that was born out of probably some frustration on your part. But I'm interested to understand that a bit more.
So my business partner Basil has done a lot of product development and was working at Wynyard when Wynyard shut at their doors.
Mm-hmm.
Turned out helped them shift in the weekend, and then on Monday the doors were locked, and he's like, oh crap, might need to get a new job. So he went off to become an enterprise architect for a period of time, and I met him, and I was selling data warehouses and data this and that other, reporting and God knows what. And I guess the one thing that kind of struck is he was sick of being involved in technical projects that often got chucked into the technical area and then failing and having to roll back and fix things out. And I was sick of talking to organisations where technology didn't have a foot at the top table. And the way we thought we would address that is by creating a product underneath a sort of a capability around delivering dynamic current state, and that's what we've done. But it was really driven out of the fact that how do you make a project go well if you don't know what you're starting from? And I don't know whether you were working at a previous place and previously, but there was an organisation that did a really, really big bang 8 ERPs all into one go, no current state, and and it blew up by about 100 million. You're like, what? So they just, and that's not having current state. And the other thing about it was, we've got people who run organisations that don't understand technology. They're not fit for purpose. And I'm not saying that because that's my opinion. I'm saying that because Institute of Directors did a report about, 3 months ago. 92% of boards, they think, don't have the right capability to carry the business through the next 10 years. And that pretty much comes down a lot to skill set. We've got accountants and lawyers running businesses that are technologically enabled to deliver services and goods to people, and yet we have no understanding of what that looks like at a top level. So that's where the passion came from. The gap in the market is don't have the right capability at the right place, don't understand how technology works, can't enable it, can't even get the basics right, and that's what made us move into what we do. Yeah. So I think we've done a good job if we de-risk projects and they go better, and then we're getting a better feedback and more insight at a board level. And trust me, on the last one, I think it's going to be harder, and we've got a long way to go.
Yeah, we are. We were talking about that offline. Unfortunately, my face with the grey beard is the predominant face, not just
but it's a cracking beard. It's a cracking beard, Daryl.
That sits on boards and at the leadership table. We have to change that, right?
Yeah.
And I've always had aspirations of being there, but then I'm like, well, actually, is my role more enabling others to get there and before me, because we need to change, right? And so that becomes it could be both. Like you said earlier, you've got to be in it to change it. You can't change it from being just throwing rocks at it, right? Because that doesn't work either. Yeah. And that's probably as much of a paradigm shift as this way of working, and changing that thought process. So I rail against, and I said it before we got online about there's no such thing as a technology project, and this alignment is a symptom. This misalignment between the business and IT is a symptom of what you described.
Yeah.
Because he just simply isn't the right capability.
But likewise, like I see these great big projects going, they have got a large amount of technological change, and yet the CIO is still reporting into the CFO.
Mm-hmm.
What's with that? That doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. It's and that's a sign of the times and the change. The tech is just a necessary evil and costful. Actually, without it, it's like going back when we started activity-based accounting.
Yeah.
Go back to the 1900s, over 100 years ago, when accountants first got the seat at the table. Are we a little bit late that technology should be having the same or equal footing?
Yeah.
Well, but I think we do ourselves a disservice too. Sorry to jump over you, but we do ourselves a little bit of a disservice because we don't know how to communicate. Is that what you see?
Yeah, definitely.
I say we, the techos.
Yeah. I see myself as having a foot staunchly in the technology camp and a foot somewhere else. I don't know where the foot is, but I'm not 100% technological. I'm more. I do laugh because I zip in and out of my accounts quite a lot, and I keep saying, now I can give you my opinion, but it's only my opinion, and you may not ask twice.
Well, strongly held.
Yeah, may not ask.
Opinion. Yeah.
But I mean, I see communication. Like I sit on a couple of boards of educational institutions, and it's the soft skills, right?
Mm.
But the fact of the matter is, when we're under pressure, we revert to type.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does. It's just part of life. And if you're not aware of that, then you go back into your shell. You go back into your safe space, whatever that may look like for you, and you stop talking to people outside you. So there's got to be more than just, everybody needs to be able to communicate. We need businesses that are built on addressing those fundamental characteristics of our teams and doing something different. And like, if you're someone who's really, really good at understanding technical concepts and is great at being able to decipher that for the business, and I'm thinking BAs are really good in this space, they tend to have quite a good capability there, then we need more technical BAs who can come and talk to our techie guys so that they don't have to do that stuff that makes them feel awkward, but their message is carried. So how we create those teams is, communication. Ugh. I think I'm good at it until my daughter looks at me sideways and goes, I have no idea what you're on about. And I'm like, oh, yeah, neither do I.
It's all about context, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
But it's a two-way street, right? You have to be ready to receive communication as much as give it or espouse it.
Yep.
And I think there's a dearth of opportunity across not a dearth, there's lots of opportunity, it's the wrong word, across that kind of senior manager to board level. I've had a couple of conversations with the likes of Mike Collins at Business South, and
he's great.
My first guest on the podcast was Brett Roberts, an old colleague of mine from Microsoft New Zealand, CTO, and he's navigated around in the industry for years, and we haven't solved the problem at that space. How do you see it evolving? If you were career advising a soon-to-be or an aspiring tech leader, how would you be counselling them?
Interesting question. Well, I think you've got to drive a cultural shift, but you've also got to be able to start looking at a dynamic, systemic change. So that means that you take the experience that you've had and you start innovating. We think about innovation as just being technical, I think, whereas we need to be innovating around other things like putting teams together and how we work and all the stuff we've just been talking about. But, what's wrong with running, different approaches to that stuff, and to do that and to get the buy-in from the business, like you said, communication, absolutely critical. But I really like what Scott Galloway, Professor Scott Galloway, do you know who he is? He's, he talks about, if there's one thing I can tell my kids, learn to tell a story. Yep. You've got to put a narrative. rocking up to the board and go, I need $100,000 because I need a new server is not the same as I'm going to drive a technological shift in our organisation by creating an opportunity for us to utilize AI or whatever, tell a story. So if and the other thing about it is use pictures. Seriously. I mean, we're doing this in our own organisation. We've got tech leadership visualizations, and a friend of mine, Mark Godden, used to say, if a picture paints 1,000 words, have 2 pictures.
Yeah.
If you're not great at communicating, use pictures. I love a good story. Don't you just love a good story? I love it. You get bought in, your passion goes, and like there's so many opportunities out there to go and jump in and learn some of those skills from people who are really, really good at it. And it's online and it's free. So, tell a good story, bring people on the journey, and also wrap around your team if you are a technology leader and be bloody loyal. Don't sell your team out when they fail or they screw up or their mistake is made. Don't let them carry the can. The best leaders I see are the ones that are the umbrella. They take it from the top, but they protect their team and build their team up. They don't embarrass anyone in public. They have little conversations. They're always interested about what drives people. Those kind of tech leaders I'm in awe of, and they're the people that I just go, oh my God, you're amazing, because I just love what you do. Great at storytelling, bringing people on the journey, but, also protecting, people who often will give their heart and soul to something and don't get a reward for it,
Yeah, that's crucial, right?
Yeah.
Particularly, one of the things I'd offer add to that, being able to tell a story. I think lots of people feel that telling a story is a bad thing, or the narrative, and you hear these undertones of it's not quite the truth. It's a bit of a story. Well, it's the furthest from the truth, actually, because people learn from storytelling. Before we could write, we told stories. We verbalized things, right? And it's deeply ingrained in humanity, right? And learning and taking things on and being able to articulate something that is compelling. And I fundamentally believe it's about hope, and that might sound a bit woo-woo, but if you don't paint a picture of where you're going, like you don't have hope, and it becomes a bit mundane, right? So it is a challenge. How do people get practice? Where do they look for opportunity?
Well, it's everything from how you run a team, right? If you're going to get up and do a stand-up in the morning, you can start with a story. I think the other thing too is you don't need to be charismatic, crazy, culty leader to tell a story and bring people on a journey. You just have to, and a story's not that difficult. What are we trying to achieve here? We're trying to achieve X, Y, Z. Well, I heard a story about how another company did it. And here's some of the learnings that I brought along. Oh, I love that. If someone says to me, we're going to debrief and have learnings, I'm going to slap someone. I am going to slap them silly. They're only as good as the time, the ability for you to actually utilize and change that. And, how do we learn things? Well, like you said, we learn through stories, we learn through narrative, but you've actually got to change things. So you've got to put some suggestions in about how you address the things that didn't go well. And you can use storytelling to do that too. It's not, I don't think it's rocket science.
Yeah, it's just getting to the essence of what you're asking of people, and bringing the richness of, and words are important too, because also saying and using the wrong words can take you down a wrong path. And I mean, sometimes people think I can be a bit pedantic, but I believe if you're using words and try not to use big, acronyms and all that sort of shit, that you'll turn people off immediately. So it's being aware of how you're communicating those things, making it worthwhile to listen to as much as anything too. And practice. Look for opportunities too, right? Volunteer to run the stand-up if you don't normally do it, even if it's not your ordained job description.
Well, even if you're presenting a change that's been made, you get up and instead of diving straight in, because that's the other thing. I was helping a CEO of a different company, a startup, sort of learn some of the ropes, and I went off to meet head of sales from an organisation, a mate of mine, and so there's 3 of us at this cafe, And in walks my mate, and I'm like, Wayne, how are you? Big cuddle, how the kids, what are you up to? Blah, 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 blah. And the new guy jumped straight into a pitch for his product. And I kicked him under the table and went, no, don't do that. You know, you have to build social trust, and, you know, there's like this social, not credibility, but capital. You know, you've got to build social capital. People have got to buy into you. And the way they buy into you is by understanding you. And that's how you start the process. If you just go on cold, people, you know, and again, that's different in small groups as it is in large groups. But again, you start with the storytelling. Oh, the kids are great, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's a little bit of those social niceties like we we're talking about before, about the enrichment that we get when we meet people in person. That's the stuff you remember. Oh, they asked about my wife. They asked about my kids. They asked about my job. They're interested in me. You know, I love that. It shows real genuine authenticity from people if it comes from the heart. And that is a start of how you tell a story and how you take people on that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more in that context. And it can't just be frivolous small talk. There has to be some authenticity behind a genuine inquiry. And if you have to make notes, so be it.
Yeah.
You know, when you've met, just make a note. However you do that, it's really important, right?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
in saying people's name, like saying, hey, Tania, is better than, you know, waiting for the next person because you can't remember the person's name. You immediately build a connection, right?
Well, you could do what I do
gonna
with
get that.
head injury, and that is completely forget that I met that person, don't know their name, and just go, hi, my name's Tania, what was your name? And they go, remember we met? And I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I just don't take any, I don't have any ego in it, because I just know that it's just me. You know, I don't mean it badly. I just can't help it.
Yeah, but that's genuine, right? And so you engage in that way, and people take that on board. And I think that you can't lose sight of that. And if there's advice you're offering to other people, is just to be genuine, be authentic, be yourself in that sense. I have not pursued a sales proposal from people where the opening gambit, the exec summary, is talking about them.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if they've gone, oh, I'm such and such from yada, 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 I'm like, okay, I don't give a shit, mate. You haven't understood who we are.
Yeah.
And so take your time to ask some questions and build some understanding, right, of who you're engaging with. Does my head in. Cover page of proposals from vendor, whoever it fucking well is.
Well, it comes across as me, you, and back to me.
And even big RFPs. Like
really?
we've had RFP. Yeah. Had RFP, and you're just like sitting there going, in the bin with that one. And it just doesn't demonstrate you give a toss, right? So it goes back to that, right? That authenticity.
Yeah.
So in terms of your time, share a success story where being a change agent has been or led to positive outcomes and advancements in this industry or in a customer.
So I think there's probably a couple. So a lot of the stuff that we do has been quite collaborative. So we were working with a small council, and they came to us and said, hey, you know how you talk about change management a lot? And I went, yeah. And they go, we don't have a change management process. And I went, oh, right. And it was actually one of my BAs at the time that picked it up, and she was going, well, why don't we just create you one? And it became a part of our product. But the interesting thing about it is because, you know, we're talking about that social, like we can talk socially. Just because you are social with someone and you are friendly with someone does not mean you can't have really honest and direct conversations about things when they don't go well. But also it means that if something could be done better, or there might be a different way of doing it, then you're having that discussion. And so I was stoked. We worked with them. We did some co-development, and we're going up for an award on that stuff, which is fantastic. And it's because the relationships went, how do we problem solve this together? You've got capability in this area, and we know what the problem is. Can we get together and fix it? So I think that was really valuable. And I think the other one was around, look, there was an organisation up here, and I won't name them. I'm not going to put names across things, but put it this way, I avoided them like the plague. there was a couple up here, and part of it was because they're real old school. They'd always done what they'd always done for as long as they'd always done it, and they were quite happy with that. And they weren't prepared to change. And then comes new CIOs, clean sweep the whole place. Everybody changed. And the next thing you know, we're having interesting conversations. It's not about how you can fit a budget. It's not how you can fit with the way we work. It's how we're changing. Can you come on the journey with us? And can we do that? And so in this particular area, there were two companies that fell into this basket. One of them created a design authority for around their architecture, and we worked with them on what that looks like and how they can use us to deliver some of the stuff they're hoping to deliver. So like I said, we do dynamic current state, but when you're talking to enterprise architects, they're thinking, what is the future going to be? But we need a place to start to build that future out. And so we worked on that piece, and it was really, really cool. And and we have these conversations every day with customers, and often we're coming on, like we're doing a big piece of operational total cost of ownership stuff. And we're doing it in a different way to some of our competitors, because we also have contracts and vendor management is baked into our product. And so bringing in the consumption-based pricing and being able to model out business activities, that's what we do. We do that every day. Putting price with it, bonza, it's just an extra bonus for what we can deliver. But that came with talking to organisations and going, why are you doing it that way? And where are you struggling? Where are your points of, your problematic areas? And like we talk a lot about communication. We've just had that chat. Well, one of the other areas that I think many technology teams don't have heaps of skill around is the financials. So we're helping with the financials, the budgeting, the forecasting, the total cost of ownership, and being able to tell that story to people that you want to invest to get rid of technical debt and things along those lines. So I think they're a little bit wishy-washy. I hope that's not too wishy-washy for you, but they're probably areas of innovation. I just can't mention names.
No, and that's fine. It's the example you use is it's palpable. It happens everywhere, right? The notion of a technology professional not having some level of competence around financials is abhorrent, because fundamentally you are talking about introducing stuff that is probably going to change the operational cost footprint of the organisation today far more than it will your CapEx stuff, because everything's going to the cloud. Guess what? You don't own that. You can't capitalise it. You can't. It's cash the minute you drop on it. And if you're not appreciating that as a technology, you're actually not doing your job properly, right? There's a professional onus on you to understand those things, not just waltz in with the shiny shit, right? That's why I'm strongly, perhaps not so loosely held opinion around this. Just one here, just angers me. There's no such thing as a technology project, and if you think there is, you're on some la land. Because even a patch update on Tuesday is about organizational risk management, and if you put it in that context, guess what? You'll get the coin. But if you rock in and go, we need to upgrade something, and you can't tell that story, you might as well just shotgun at your toes and dance out of the room. So
perhaps not.
No, perhaps not. Just don't wield them. Just point them at the ground. Be safe about it. But that's crucial, right? And so even to the point where I will advocate there's no such thing as a technology strategy. We have a business strategy. I used that line on a Microsoft call the other day. What's your AOS strategy? I'm like, why? It's a tool. Why do I need a strategy for a tool? Oh.
But that's interesting, isn't it? Like, if you do actually understand your financials, you understand the total cost of ownership, you can start looking at the return on investment is probably a real weak point as well. I've seen business cases you could drive a bus through and they don't alternatively, like there's no alternatives. Haven't looked at an alternative. This is what we're doing. Like, oh, right, okay, that's a good way of doing it. But the return on investment cannot be, it's stuff that's been taken off a vendor's website. Hold your vendors to a higher account for their transport. I'll give you this example. I was doing a piece of work, and I'm going to be doing it for a long time because it's not easy, and it is around the financials, working with one of New Zealand's biggest vendors. And I sat down with the account manager for this company because they asked me to, and spent 90 minutes of my life trying to understand why their billing was so difficult to understand. And what I walked out of that is not knowing anything more except how difficult it was, and then thinking there is value for this vendor to make this as difficult as possible, and they will continue to get away with it because the customer will not hold them accountable. Give me a bloody, give me a bill, give me the financials that I can understand. Because if you can't understand the billing, then you definitely don't understand the value that this organisation is getting out of that, and you can't understand what it's going to cost you going forward. You just can't. So those kind of things, like, you know, seriously, vendors, sort it out. Just so you know, I am a vendor.
Yeah, but like there are some trips and traps you gotta learn or understand at least. You know, my time going through sales management and that, you know, I was a sales manager for a period of time, running a technical team, mind you, but the simple reality is you get to learn that stuff, and I'm better for it now, having owned my own business. You know, if I was recruiting an enterprise architect and I had someone that had come from being a developer or a BA and someone over there that had owned their own business, guess who I'd take? Even if they'd never been a technologist, I'll take the person that owned their own business any day.
Well, I've got to say, you learn. I was saying to somebody, they said, oh, I've got a new job and I'm learning like 60, 70% of new stuff. And I'm like, every day I wake up and it's 90% of shit I've never seen before.
Yeah.
Maybe not to that extreme, but, you know, you've got to, you know, and just on that bit there, my favourite bit is, like we were talking about earlier, the guy who said, I thought you'd be driving a Tesla rather than a Nissan Leaf. And I'm like, oh, white me, you have no idea you don't know what we're doing. You know, and it doesn't, those external things don't show what the internal workings are like. But, you know, you wake up and you've got to learn a whole new technology stack. You've got to learn a different way of explaining something. You've got to, you know, everything is almost brand new all the time. And that's exhausting. It's also heaps of fun.
Yeah, it is heaps of fun. You bring meaning to the technical, like the technical aspects of the job, right? It's no different than an accountant explaining some acronym that means you got to pay your tax on time. Maybe I need to go and talk to them, but in that sense, you have to be that interpreter, right? The translator, and it is no good stumping up. Actually, back on that communication thing, one of the worst things I see is someone believing they're doing good communication because they're talking about their technical prowess.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I've been guilty as charged, right? And so you have to evolve as a technologist if you want to bring this change and help people understand it, then you have to be part of that change.
Hey, I was up in Auckland a couple of weeks ago and I met this really nice man, and he did not stop talking for 22 minutes.
Jesus.
22 minutes. I sat there. I had a coffee and I thought, man, I really wish this was a bottomless coffee. And I didn't say a word for 22 minutes. And the thing is, I think I don't take it as a bad thing because I'm sure I have probably done something similar. In fact, I guarantee it when I was younger. But, you know, we're in our 50s and 40s now, and this guy's talking at me, telling me how great he is. And I was like out of my mind with boredom. You know, I don't want to hear about your CV. I want to know what character you are. I want to know your character. I want to know how you solve problems, because that is really insightful. You know, to help people solve problems helps me understand their moral and ethical approach to life, and that's important. Like that stuff's important to me. It may not be important to other people, but it is really massively important to me.
But that's a great insight, Tania, in terms of how are you seeing the future of the tech industry in New Zealand evolving, right?
Yeah.
What does that look like for you? Describe that individual you just talked about in 5 years, in 10 years' time. What do they look like? What are they doing?
Oh, God. Here's what I think is going to happen. AI is going to get really hyper-specialised because it's going to have to. We are going to spend a lot more time working out how we're going to ecologically pay for the things that we want now, because we are a global community of people who want the lollies, and we don't want to work out at the gym to balance things out a little bit, you know. So there's going to be a lot of turmoil in that area. I don't think technology teams are going to look the same way that they look like now, because they're not working now. You know, you talk about, well, I don't want to hear another technology project, but while we have technology and the rest of the business like that, unless you are an incredibly skilled leader to bring people's capabilities and marry them up, we need probably more, you know, cross-discipline teams to be able to deliver better. You know, and then there's BAU and then there's other things, right? BAU and technical debt and all the stuff that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, the patching, the scaling, the sorting, you know, there will be people that are really, really good at that. Perhaps we should be hiving our teams off to concentrate on that piece, and then looking at other ways that we integrate with the business to drive better outcomes. But I just don't think that the way we lead people, the way we consider our technology team at the moment, that is going to change. Like, we can get, hey, I can code. I can use an AI to code stuff. You know, I can do stuff that I never thought I could do before. You know, and it's funny because I was doing a finance paper a couple of, I don't know, last semester, I think it was, and I was doing really highly, you know, I was doing future value of money, and with, you know, exchange rate and like quite big, dense calculations. And my FX82 calculator, oh my God, has it gone under some massive rapid change? I felt like an absolute beast. So I'm getting my AI to tell me how to work things out and making it better for me. But it was shit at maths, so I relied on my calculator because it was a better at doing, you know, I'm better at running that now that I understand how to use it. And that's me using these two different and diverse capabilities to make me better at what I was trying to learn. You know, so we're going to be doing things in a totally different way. And the future is for those who can embrace the change and actually harness it in a way that is valuable to the organizations they work with. And even better, tell people if you're getting these wee hacks and these wee breakthroughs. Oh man, I love a hack. I was talking to this guy last week, and he's really fascinating. Runs about 6 different companies. He's highly functional, and he was telling me how to use this, and he can hack these things and drive this outcome. And I'm like, oh my God, this is gold. Thank you for sharing it with me, because it makes me better at what I do, you know? So yeah, like I said, you know, that storytelling, tell the stories of where you've done things better and how that drives value for the organizations that you're working in, because that's the future of what we're moving towards, you know? So it's going to be interesting. I do think there will be a lot more, you know, that calm work. Being a generalist is helpful. Knowing the evolution of technological change and the gotchas and the stack is really helpful. But I can't help thinking we're going to be a diverse team of highly general and highly specific, and we'll be integrating and acknowledging the business in a different way. I don't think it's going to stay the same.
Yeah, I like it's interesting. I rail against even the use of the phrase "their business," and I've had sessions with the ex-car, and they look at me going, can I say that? And like, it gets a bit of a joke going on. But actually, and the only reason I do it, because the words "the business" is meaningful in the right context, right? But actually, it stimulates a different way of describing or talking about what you're trying to achieve, right? Don't just be intellectually lazy. Actually describe what the capability is that you're going to deliver or change or whatever. And it actually much more difficult. And it was funny, early on my time at where I currently work, Sawfern Farms, we were running an XK session with talking about enterprise architecture. You know what? We were there for 2.5 hours. We didn't talk about enterprise architecture at all. We were using a business model canvas, and I was challenging, saying it has to be built more than blah blah blah. You know, like the old bullet point on the thing. And by the end of it, the CE Simon, he's hard case guy, he was calling his peers, but that's blah blah. Like, seriously, you know. So just opening up that conversation is really important. Hey, look, one last thing, in the context of our conversation, we've kind of ducked and dived all over. The common theme is change agents and driving that. What's one piece of advice you would give an aspiring change agent, or someone, you know, I don't know that that's a job title, but that is aspiring to bring change in the New Zealand tech
I'd
scene?
probably give a couple, and that is, if you're going to be a change agent, you need to understand that there is resistance to change, and that's going to be a massive challenge to what you try and achieve. Not everybody's going to be on, the bus of success to move forward on that one. So winning hearts and minds and those storytelling and communication, high degrees of communication will be absolutely critical for that. And you need to build trust with teams and business, not the business, not the technology, but everybody, right?
Yeah.
And to build trust, you need to be talking to people. And so, go out and learn what people do for their jobs and understand the challenges that you can help. So if you come up with a new way of doing whatever it is in your role as a change agent, then make sure that you can wrap it around the language of, this is what's in it for you. This is what it's going to do and help you achieve in your role. You told me you had this challenge. Here's a way that this project or this thing that we're going to do is actually going to make your life easier. Be specific about it. Like you said, don't be lazy in terms of understanding the outcomes of delivery. And I think the other thing is it's about balancing the short-term and long-term goal setting for an organisation. Like, this is a long-term initiative. If you're going to change your organisation into an organisation that loves, embraces, and is good at change, then having a real clear vision of what that looks like is critical. But it's a long-term goal, and you're going to have to set yourself up for some short-term campaigning and continually building on those little successes, because people, change is hard for many people. Like, I love it. My partner is absolutely methodical in everything he does. I am definitely not. Like, I change things all the time. Like, I'll hold on to a way of doing something for 6 months, and then I think, oh, it doesn't work for me anymore. I'm going to try something different. And I'm open, and I read a lot and I do a lot of those things, but not everyone's like me. And I can appreciate that I can exhaust people's good intentions very quickly by rationing onto them about stuff. So you've got to be able to put things into a short-term framework for people, make it accessible and doable, keep the long-term in mind, and make sure that you can build your people up to emulate and be those change agents themselves in their own organizations. And I tell you what, it's a lot easier to recruit for it than it is to bring on an existing team and take them on the journey when this is the way they've always done it. So there's lots of challenges there, but it's a definitely, if you're going to bite off a challenge, this is a good challenge to have, becoming an agent of change. I don't see that it's great. Embrace it. Love it to death.
Yeah, look, I couldn't agree more, and it's an exciting time in the industry as well, because change is coming whether we like it or not. So, if you're up for it and able to, and it inspires you to get out of bed in the morning, then step into it and help lead the way. Hey, look, team, that's Tania Armstrong from state3.co.nz. Check out their website and what they bring to the table. Tania, I appreciate you and the time you've afforded me. I've got some insight, and I know those that are listening today and in the future will pick up some good tips. So that's a wrap. Check us next time, team.
Thanks, Daryl. Lovely to chat.